clicked on this video, chances are you've seen the last season of Stranger Things and you're not very impressed by its quirks. And if you're like me at all, you grew up watching Stranger Things and that was pretty disappointing. But what exactly about the last season was so unsatisfying? Well, I think it ultimately comes down to one thing: horror. And a bunch of other things we'll get to later, but I think horror is a good place to start. Also, I think this kind of goes without saying, but big spoiler warning for the ending and last season of Stranger Things. One of the things that I believe brought people into Stranger Things, along with its iconic 80s aesthetic, was its horror. The most blatant example of that is the extremely threatening nature of the Upside Down. The Upside Down being the alternate dimension our protagonists are forced to explore in order to save their friends, which you probably know because you're watching this video, which means you've probably watched the show, unless you're living in the Wheeler's basement or something, which, I mean, that's just weird. Over the course of this series, the Upside Down gets gradually less dangerous for our protagonists as they develop strength and the skill to take down the malicious monsters that inhabit it. Admittedly, that's a pretty natural progression. As our protagonists grow over the course of the series, it would make sense that they learn how to handle the monsters with more success and less risk. But that's not really how the Upside Down progression is handled, especially in the last season. Over the course of the series, instead of making the main characters, besides 11, get stronger, the monsters of the Upside Down just stopped threatening the characters altogether. That was pretty disappointing to see in the final season because there are pretty much no Demidog or Demigorgon encounters in the Upside Down. I mean, in the normal world there are, but most of the time, except for when they're kidnapping Holly, I guess, the main cast knew they were coming, and the monsters weren't presented as a real threat. That all culminates in when characters enter the Upside Down, there's kind of an air of comfortability that makes it lose all sense of urgency and danger. One thing I will give the Duffer Brothers is that these encounters wouldn't really make as much sense, as the main powerhouse of the group, 11, could easily dispose of the monsters by that point. Their solution for that issue is to separate 11 from the rest of the main characters for most of the season. Despite that, there are pretty much no Demogorgon or Demidog encounters in the Upside Down to threaten the other main characters. But the fauna in the Upside Down aren't the only scary part of the series, though, as even in the first season, the military is a looming presence fighting against our main characters. Over the course of the series, the military is slowly brought out of the shadows, and in the last season, we even have some military characters to follow who are trying to thwart the protagonist's efforts. Similarly to the Upside Down, the less obscure nature of the military in the last season kind of lessens the scariness of it, but I actually don't think that is as much of a bad thing in this case, because the military lends itself to being a truly devious organization, while the Upside Down is presented more just as a force of nature, at least in the first few seasons. I do think the military was handled poorly, though, in this season as well, for several other reasons. The culmination of the first 7 episodes of season 5 is this great battle with Vecna's monsters and the main cast in this military base, and around Hawkins, the side characters are trying to save other kids. Now, considering the military has an entire research base in the Upside Down, you might think they have a good grasp on how to defend against those creatures, namely that bullets don't work, because we've seen that for 4 seasons now. So what do they do when they're being ambushed by Demogorgons? They use more guns, of course. They even showed they knew fire was the only thing that did physical damage to the Upside Down monsters, because when they were opening the portal to the Upside Down, they used flamethrowers to do it. And the only thing that actually does any damage from the military to the monsters is the one guy with the flamethrower. I would have assumed the military had more useful equipment like the flamethrower to use against the monsters, but considering the context, I guess they just secured the base in the Upside Down with blind luck, because there's no other way they would have gotten through those monsters. You could also say they got caught off guard, which they did, but there's no way the research team dedicated to exploring the Upside Down and studying the fauna would have had no contingency plan in the case that they got ambushed by the monsters. That just doesn't make any sense to me. It's the military. One more thing too about the military, and this is after the main climax and the fight and everything happens, but the main characters get caught by the military after they're leaving the Upside Down. And you might think that they might face some repercussions, because we've even seen Nancy kill a bunch of military members. But after Elle makes her big sacrifice, everyone just goes back to life like normal. You're trying to tell me there's no consequence to killing actual military officers? That doesn't make any sense to me. On a separate note, I wanted to talk about some of the more emotional parts of the series, because there are some good moments, but there were some that just didn't really sit right with me. In my opinion, in most media or content, the emotional impact of important scenes is dependent on the build-up over the course of that content or media. Over the course of Stranger Things, there have been many cross-season character arcs. For the purpose of this video, I won't be covering all of them, but I did want to talk about some of them. Will Byers is a great example of this because we see as he grows up, he becomes less avoidant of his sexuality. A few times he almost confesses his love for his best friend, Mike. I actually found that pretty compelling whenever it came up in the show because at this point in time, most people were still pretty homophobic, and I'm sure Mike had a lot of pressure on him to keep it a secret. I think it's really great that there was a dedicated scene to this because it was a big plot point being built up. But the dialogue in his coming out scene was, I don't know, it just felt very scripted, if that makes sense. I mean, don't get me wrong, I think Noah Schnapp did a great job in this scene, but I think he was just really held back by the material he was given. Overall, I did like the scene, but it just kind of felt awkward. If you guys felt differently, feel free to leave your opinions in the comments. I'd love to read them. And hey, if you've made it this far in the video and you're kind of enjoying my content, hit that subscribe button. You better ring the bell too. I'm coming for you. Generally, when people consume media, they like to see the characters grow and change, especially when it's a coming-of-age story like Stranger Things is most of the time. What people don't like to see is the same character conflicts over and over and over again. There are two character relationships that fall victim to this in the final season. The relationship between Steve and Nancy, and between Hopper and Eleven. Hopper and Eleven have a very distinct relationship because it's really the most intimate parent-child one we see throughout the series. Not that it's the only one, of course. For much of season 4, we didn't get to see the two on screen together, so I was very excited to see how they would interact this season. What I wasn't excited to see was how they pretty much reused all of the conflicts from season 3 again here. I understand that relationships can be very tense when you're in an alternate dimension fighting demons and scary guys with guns, but I was kind of getting sick of the same, sorry Eleven, I can't protect you and you can't go on this mission, and Hopper, you never trust me. I guess it just doesn't make much sense to me considering she's supposed to be the most powerful character in the main cast, but I digress. Steve and Nancy's relationship is also confusing because it also insists on rehashing conflict from previous seasons. It was pretty clear by the end of the last season that these two were not supposed to be romantically involved. But the show insisted on creating an awkward love triangle between them and Steve that was just boring at this point in the story. I understand that there needed to be some comic relief, but I feel like there was probably a better option somewhere. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the ending of the series at all in this video. This fight was essentially the culmination of multiple years worth of world building, character arcs, childhood, and training. Take a guess how long you think the final fight lasted. If you guessed 30 minutes, you'd be wrong. It was 8 minutes. That's right, 8 minutes. This video is longer than that. And on top of that, the Demogorgons and Demidogs that failed to appear throughout the season also failed to appear here. I thought if they weren't in the Upside Down, they might have been here, which is apparently the home planet of the Demi species, but apparently they're just extinct or something? I don't know. I mean, I did like how Joyce was the one to deal the finishing blow on Vecna, but altogether I was not very impressed when I watched this fight. Okay. I've been really harsh on this season, but there were some things I actually did like, believe it or not. The scene that had me on the edge of my seat the most, by far, was that one where Nancy and Jonathan get stuck in the room with that white goop that was about to drown them. The tension that's built up in the scene because of the rising danger perfectly reflects the rising tension between the two of them over the course of the last few seasons. Earlier in the season, Murray slipped Jonathan an engagement ring, hinting he should propose to Nancy, which I also thought was cool because Murray was actually there when their relationship started. Nancy, on the other hand, has been completely avoidant of Jonathan the entire season so far and refuses to acknowledge him in like any romantic way. What's cool about this scene is that Jonathan actually opens up about his frustrations in a very like forward way, probably because they think they're about to die. And that kind of culminates in Jonathan confessing his love, but he ultimately unproposes with the ring, throwing it to the side. And I think that means they're broken up. It wasn't really clear to me, but again, if you feel like it, let me know what you think about it in the comments. One other newer relationship I thought was nice was that between Max and Holly. Once Holly is plugged into Kamatots, she finds a letter in the mailbox telling her to go into the woods, and meets Max, who's been there ever since she was put into a coma in season 4. Over the course of the season, they explore Vecna's memories and build their base in a spot where Henry's too emotionally scarred to enter, which becomes their safe haven. In this safe haven, they end up finding a memory of Henry as a child coming across the power that he now wields in the Upside Down. I thought this was cool because we get to see them grow into kind of like a big sister, little sister relationship, where Max gives Holly advice on how to find courage in a situation as hopeless as the one they're in. I did think it was kind of weird how she gave a long speech about it at a point where there wasn't really a lot of time to be doing that, but either way, I found it pretty wholesome. So obviously, I've had my gripes with this season, like most of the internet at this point, but to be honest, they all stem from one foundational issue in the final season: the pacing. We've seen this time and time again where beloved shows are forced to wrap up tons of plot points because they aren't allowed the proper time to flesh out character arcs and intense moments. I noticed that for lots of episodes, we would be constantly cutting from scene to scene, A plot to B plot, and honestly, it just came across as super rushed. I understand that they were put into a peculiar position because at a certain point, the actors would have been too old to play the age of their characters. But I don't know, I would have rather had a time skip or something to a future point and had the story pick up where the characters were just as old as their actors, than have every plot jam-packed into what ended up being a bloated, confusing, and clunky final season. I'm always going to have a soft spot for these characters because I grew up watching them grow up. I mean, the first season came out... Wait, when did it come out? In 2016? Sheesh, I was in middle school. That's just insane. Regardless, I think the overall show has been just amazing, and I have thoroughly enjoyed watching it. I just wish the same care and love from the first 4 seasons went into the ending. Anyways, that's about all I gotta say. I hope you guys liked what I had to say about it. I know everyone's kind of talking about it right now. Again, if you liked the video, please subscribe, and you better ring that bell. And if you want, I'd love to see what you guys think about this season in the comments below. Have a good one.